I never thought I'd be saved by a dog. But there she was, standing in front of me, her fur matted from the rain, eyes filled with something like hope, as if she knew exactly what I needed. Zoe Morgan had been lost in the woods for 3 days, but it wasn't luck that kept her alive. It was a stray dog, a German shepherd with no collar, no tag, and no home. It was the kind of story you only hear about in movies, but for Zoe, it was her reality. The first night she was lost, panic set in. The sky grew dark, the forest echoing with strange sounds, and every shadow seemed to be lurking closer. Alone, scared, and cold, she could feel her strength slipping away. That's when she saw it. A pair of amber eyes gleaming from the underbrush. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but no. The dog stepped into the clearing, hesitant but determined, as if she knew Zoe needed help. For a moment, Zoe was frozen in place. The dog wasn't aggressive. She wasn't even barking, just watching, waiting. Zoe had no idea what to do, but she slowly knelt down, offering a silent gesture of trust. The dog moved closer, then laid down beside her, nudging Zoe's side with her cold nose. Zoe couldn't believe it. She had heard stories of stray dogs helping people, but she never imagined she'd be one of those people. By the time the second day came, the situation had only worsened. Zoe was hungry, exhausted, and the cold wasn't letting up. The dog, who she had come to call Rocky, stayed by her side, providing warmth in the harsh, wet conditions. Whenever Zoe's body trembled from the cold, Rocky would curl up close to her, sharing what little warmth she had left. The third day felt like it might be the end. Zoe's energy was running low, and she couldn't help but wonder if anyone would find her in time. She heard the wind howling through the trees, a chilling reminder that time was running out. But Rocky never left her side. She stayed close, vigilant, never straying far. It was as if she knew Zoe couldn't make it alone. Just when Zoe had lost all hope, she heard voices, distant at first, then closer, until finally, 2 rescuers broke through the trees, shouting her name. Zoe's heart raced as she tried to sit up, but the pain in her body stopped her. Rocky stood protectively by her side, eyes fixed on the strangers. And just like that, Zoe was saved. It wasn't just the rescuers who found her. It was a dog who had never left her side, a dog who had given her the strength to hold on, to believe in the impossible. Zoe had never felt so helpless. As she lay on the cold forest floor, wrapped in the warmth of Rocky's fur, she felt a glimmer of hope she hadn't known she could still have. The sounds of the forest, once terrifying, now felt distant, as if they were part of another world. Zoe's body was weak, her limbs stiff from the cold, but the presence of the stray dog kept her grounded. Rocky had not left her side, even when the rain poured and the wind howled. Zoe knew she couldn't survive on her own, but with the dog by her side, she felt a tiny spark of determination. She began to speak to Rocky, though she didn't expect the dog to understand. "We just need to hold on, girl," she whispered, her voice barely a murmur. "Help is coming. I know it." For a moment, she thought she could hear the faint sound of someone calling her name, but it was so distant, like a dream. She tried to sit up, but quickly fell back down, her body too weak to support her. Rocky growled softly, sensing Zoe's struggle. The dog nudged her gently with her nose, offering comfort and encouragement. It was as if Rocky understood the gravity of the situation, and her loyalty was unwavering. The third night in the woods was the hardest. Zoe's fever had worsened, and she could barely keep her eyes open. The cold was unbearable, and her body was shutting down. Yet, Rocky remained beside her, curled up to provide warmth. Zoe could feel the dog's heartbeat against her skin, a steady reminder that she wasn't alone. It was then that Zoe thought about her family. She had always been close to them, but now, in the middle of the forest with only a dog for company, she realized how much she missed them. "I wish I could hear their voices," she thought. "I wish I could see their faces again." But despite the fear creeping up on her, Zoe tried to remain hopeful. The sound of wind crashing through the trees was deafening, and the darkness felt suffocating. But Rocky was there, steady and constant, never leaving her side. By the time the first light of morning broke through the trees, Zoe had almost given up hope. She had no idea how much longer she could endure the cold, the hunger, and the isolation. But just as she began to lose consciousness, the unmistakable sound of voices reached her ears. It was faint at first, but it grew louder as they approached. The rescuers were here. Zoe's heart raced as she tried to open her eyes, but the effort was too much. She could hear the footsteps coming closer. The rescuers had finally found her. And there was Rocky, standing protectively by her side, guarding her as if she were her own. When the rescuers reached Zoe, they were stunned to find the girl alive, especially after hearing that she had been missing for 3 days. They quickly wrapped her in blankets, offering her warmth and comfort, but Zoe's eyes were on Rocky. "She saved me," Zoe whispered, her voice weak but filled with gratitude. "She saved my life." Rocky, now standing a few feet away, watched Zoe with calm, watchful eyes, as if knowing that her job was done. The bond between them was unspoken but deep, a bond forged in the most unlikely of circumstances. Zoe was going home, safe and sound, because of the loyalty of a stray dog who refused to leave her side. The days that followed Zoe's rescue were filled with recovery, but her mind often wandered back to the forest, to the moments she shared with Rocky. As she lay in a hospital bed, wrapped in blankets and surrounded by warmth, Zoe couldn't help but think of the stray dog who had saved her life. The doctors and rescuers were amazed by her survival, but Zoe knew the real miracle had come in the form of a dog, a loyal companion who had never left her side. The bond between them was something she would never forget. Rocky had given her more than warmth and shelter during those 3 days. The dog had given her hope when it seemed all but lost. Zoe's family, who had been frantic with worry during her disappearance, were overjoyed to have her back. Her parents, who had never seen their daughter so vulnerable, were grateful to the strangers who had found her, but Zoe couldn't stop thinking about Rocky. She kept asking the paramedics, the doctors, and anyone who would listen if they had found the dog. But every time, they looked at her with a puzzled expression, unsure of who she was talking about. After a week in the hospital, Zoe was finally strong enough to leave. Her parents were relieved, but Zoe's thoughts remained with Rocky. They had been through so much together, and she felt an undeniable connection with the stray dog that couldn't be explained by words alone. When she returned home, Zoe couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She would sit by the window, gazing out at the empty streets, hoping for a sign, hoping to see that familiar pair of amber eyes. One evening, as she sat on the porch, staring out into the distance, Zoe heard a soft sound behind her. Turning around, she gasped in disbelief. There, standing at the edge of her yard, was Rocky. The dog had found her. Rocky stood still for a moment, her eyes locking with Zoe's. Then, as if confirming that they were truly reunited, the dog took a few slow steps forward, her tail wagging cautiously. Zoe couldn't contain her excitement as she rushed toward her. "Rocky," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You found me." The dog moved closer, nuzzling her gently, and Zoe wrapped her arms around her, feeling the warmth of the dog's fur once more. It was as though time had never passed. The bond they had formed in the forest during those desperate days was stronger than ever. Rocky had come to her, not as a stray, but as a true companion, a friend who had refused to give up on her. From that moment on, Zoe and Rocky were inseparable. The dog, once a stray, had found her way back into Zoe's life, and they both knew that no matter where life would take them, they would face it together. Rocky had given Zoe something that no one else could, a second chance. And for that, Zoe would be forever grateful. Zoe's life slowly returned to normal, but it wasn't the same. Every day felt like a blessing, but the shadow of those 3 days in the woods lingered, reminding her how fragile life could be. She spent hours walking around her neighborhood, her hand resting on Rocky's back as the dog kept a steady pace by her side. The connection between them was undeniable, and Zoe couldn't help but marvel at how the dog had not only saved her life, but had become her anchor in a world that felt uncertain. It wasn't long before Zoe began to open up to her parents about the experience. They listened with wide eyes, the disbelief in their faces turning to awe as she spoke of the days in the woods. Zoe described the cold, the hunger, and the fear, but she also spoke of the warmth she found in Rocky's presence, how the dog had never left her side, always offering comfort and hope when there seemed to be none. Her parents, who had been so worried, couldn't believe how strong she had been to survive. But Zoe knew the truth. It wasn't just her strength that had kept her alive, it was Rocky. One evening, as Zoe sat on the porch, her parents beside her, she realized just how much the dog had impacted her life. Rocky had shown her the true meaning of loyalty, of never giving up on someone, no matter how dire the situation. The dog had become not just her savior, but her best friend, her companion in every sense of the word. Zoe looked down at Rocky, who was sitting quietly beside her, her amber eyes watching the sunset. "You saved me, Rocky," Zoe said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I'll never forget what you did for me." Rocky tilted her head slightly, as if understanding every word. Zoe smiled and stroked the dog's fur, feeling a deep sense of gratitude wash over her. Life had a way of throwing unexpected challenges, but Zoe now knew she could face them, as long as she had Rocky by her side. The two of them had formed a bond that went beyond words, one that would last for a lifetime. Every day after that, Zoe and Rocky continued their walks, their routine offering a sense of comfort in the midst of a world that sometimes felt chaotic. With Rocky by her side, Zoe had learned that no matter how dark the world may seem, there is always light. Sometimes it comes in the most unexpected forms, like a stray dog that became a hero. As Zoe and Rocky walked down the path, side by side, Zoe couldn't help but feel that their journey together was just beginning. They had survived the woods, but the true adventure was just beginning. The adventure of life, filled with challenges, triumphs, and the unbreakable bond of friendship. Zoe had never imagined that life could feel this complete. Each day, she and Rocky grew closer, their bond deepening in ways that words could never describe. The dog, once a stray wandering the woods, was now an inseparable part of her life. They went on long walks through the park, enjoying the sun on their faces and the wind in their hair. Zoe had become stronger, not just physically, but emotionally, and much of it was because of Rocky's constant presence. One Saturday afternoon, as Zoe sat on the porch with her parents, watching Rocky chase after a fallen leaf, Zoe reflected on how far she had come. The girl who once feared the forest, who had felt so alone and lost, was now filled with a sense of purpose. She realized that her time in the woods had changed her. It had shown her the strength within herself, a strength she hadn't known she had. It had also shown her the beauty of unexpected friendships. Rocky had been that friend, the one who had been there when no one else could. Her parents, noticing the change in Zoe, spoke quietly among themselves. They were proud of their daughter's resilience, but they knew that the experience had left its mark. Zoe's mother, Sarah, smiled softly as she watched Zoe interact with Rocky. "You two have been through something together, haven't you?" she said, her voice filled with warmth. Zoe nodded, her eyes meeting her mother's. "Yes, we have," she replied, her voice steady. "And I'll never forget it." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Zoe and Rocky shared a quiet moment together. The world around them was peaceful, and for the first time in a long while, Zoe felt truly at home. Rocky lay next to her, resting her head on Zoe's lap, and Zoe ran her fingers through the dog's fur, feeling the soft warmth beneath her hand. In that moment, Zoe knew that no matter what the future held, she would face it with Rocky by her side. They had been through the worst together, and they had come out stronger because of it. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Zoe whispered softly, "Thank you, Rocky. I'll never be alone again." The dog, as if understanding every word, lifted her head and nuzzled Zoe's hand, her eyes filled with the same loyalty that had kept Zoe alive in the forest. It was a silent promise, a promise that no matter where life took them, they would always have each other. Zoe's life slowly settled into a new rhythm, one that now included Rocky in every moment. Their walks, once filled with uncertainty and fear, had transformed into simple pleasures. The park was their favorite place, and every morning, Zoe and Rocky would walk along the winding path, the cool morning air brushing against their faces. It was a time for reflection, a time to appreciate how far they had come together. Zoe had returned to school, though it wasn't easy. Her classmates had been curious, asking about her disappearance, but she chose not to talk much about the 3 days in the woods. Instead, she focused on the future, on moving forward. Rocky was her constant reminder of how resilient she had become. Every day after school, she would rush home, eager to see the dog waiting for her. It was a reunion she looked forward to each day, no matter how tired she was. One afternoon, as Zoe sat on the porch with her parents, she looked at Rocky, who was lying beside her, content and calm. Zoe's father, Mark, had noticed the change in his daughter. She was no longer the girl who had been lost and afraid. There was a confidence about her now, a sense of peace. "You're doing well, Zoe," he said, his voice filled with pride. Zoe smiled softly. "I feel different," she replied, her voice steady. "It's like I've been given a second chance." Her mother, Sarah, nodded in agreement. "It's amazing what a bond with an animal can do," she said. "Rocky is a special dog." Zoe glanced down at the German Shepherd, who was now napping peacefully by her feet. "She saved my life," Zoe said quietly. "But I think she saved me in more ways than one." As the weeks passed, Zoe's bond with Rocky deepened. She spent more time learning about the dog, taking care of her, and making sure Rocky was as happy as she made Zoe feel. They would spend hours playing in the yard, chasing after balls, and just being together. It was their way of communicating, a language that didn't need words. One day, while walking in the park, Zoe spotted a lost dog wandering nearby. It was a small, scruffy thing, with matted fur and a sad look in its eyes. Without thinking, Zoe approached the dog, bending down to offer a hand. "Hey there," she said softly. "Are you lost?" The dog seemed to trust her immediately, walking over and licking her hand. Zoe smiled, gently petting the dog. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'll help you." She knew what it felt like to be lost, to feel alone, and she wasn't going to let this dog experience that. Zoe took the dog home, and after a few weeks of care, the dog was adopted by a loving family. The experience reminded Zoe of how far she had come since the days in the woods. She had been saved by Rocky, and now, she was paying it forward. Life had come full circle, and the bond between Zoe and Rocky had given her the strength to help another lost soul. Together, they were stronger than ever, and Zoe knew that no matter what came next, she would face it with the love and loyalty of a dog by her side. The bond between Zoe and Rocky grew even stronger as the months passed. They were no longer just survivors of an ordeal, they were a family. Zoe's world had shifted completely since she had been rescued, and every day felt like a gift. With Rocky by her side, everything seemed more manageable. Zoe's parents had seen the change in her, but even they couldn't fully understand the depth of the connection between their daughter and the dog. The unconditional love and loyalty that Rocky had shown her was something that went beyond mere companionship. It was a bond formed through survival, and it was something Zoe would forever treasure. As time went on, Zoe began to volunteer at a local animal shelter, helping other animals find the homes they deserved. It became her mission to give back in the way that Rocky had given to her. She knew that not every animal would be as lucky as she was to have a second chance, but she was determined to make a difference, even if it was one dog at a time. The shelter quickly became a place of solace for Zoe, a place where she could see the healing process unfold, just as it had for her. One afternoon, Zoe was sitting on the steps of the shelter when a familiar sound reached her ears. She looked up, and there, standing at the gate, was a familiar face, Rocky. The dog had found her, as if she had never left, and it was clear that Rocky still considered Zoe her home. Zoe stood up, smiling widely as she walked toward the dog. "Rocky," she whispered, "you came back to visit, didn't you?" Rocky wagged her tail furiously, the excitement in her eyes clear. Zoe knelt down and embraced the dog, feeling the familiar warmth of her fur. It was in this moment that Zoe realized how much Rocky had truly impacted her life. It wasn't just about the rescue or the adventure. They had formed something far deeper than that. Zoe had learned that love and loyalty could come from the most unexpected places. She had been lost, but through the unwavering loyalty of a stray dog, she had found herself again. As Zoe stood up, she looked at Rocky and said, "You've given me everything I need. I'm never letting you go." The two of them walked side by side into the shelter, a perfect pair. As they passed the other animals, Zoe couldn't help but think about how many dogs there were that needed someone to love them. She had found her perfect match in Rocky, and she knew that with each dog she helped, she was giving them a chance at the same kind of bond she had with her beloved German Shepherd. They had both been through so much, but now, they were a team, a family, and nothing could ever break their connection. Zoe's life had truly changed in ways she had never anticipated. She no longer saw the world as a place full of fear and uncertainty, but as a place of endless possibilities, with Rocky always by her side. The bond between them had solidified into something unbreakable, and as time went on, their adventures became a part of the fabric of her everyday life. The days of feeling lost and alone in the forest felt like a distant memory now, but Zoe would never forget the lesson that came with it. That sometimes, the most unexpected connections could be the ones that save you. On weekends, Zoe and Rocky would head out on hikes together, venturing through the woods and along the trails. They had come full circle. Zoe, once lost in those very woods, now found peace in them, knowing that she was never truly alone. Rocky, always the loyal companion, trotted ahead, her tail wagging as if she knew the journey was more about the bond they shared than the destination. One particular afternoon, as they walked down a familiar path, Zoe paused to catch her breath. She looked at Rocky, her heart full of gratitude. The dog had been more than a companion. She had been Zoe's guide, her protector, and her friend when no one else could be. Rocky had saved her in ways she didn't fully understand, but the depth of their connection was something she felt every day. As they sat together on a rock, watching the sun set over the horizon, Zoe reflected on the changes in her life. She had rediscovered herself, rediscovered her strength. She had learned to trust again, not only in others, but also in herself. The forest, once a place of terror, was now a place of solace. And it was all because of Rocky. Over time, their story spread. Zoe shared her journey with others, telling them about the stray dog who had saved her life. She spoke about how, through Rocky, she had learned the true meaning of loyalty, compassion, and hope. She had never expected to form such a deep connection with an animal, but the bond they had created was one of a kind. Zoe's story inspired others to open their hearts to the possibility of such bonds, not just with animals, but with people too. She knew that life could be unpredictable, but with Rocky by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. Rocky, too, had found her purpose. She wasn't just a stray dog anymore. She was Zoe's protector, her family, and her best friend. The dog had come into Zoe's life at just the right moment, teaching her lessons she would carry with her forever. And as they walked together, side by side, through the woods and beyond, Zoe knew that the two of them would always be there for each other, no matter what. As the seasons changed, so did Zoe's life. She no longer felt the weight of uncertainty that once clouded her every thought. With Rocky by her side, the world felt brighter, filled with opportunities and new beginnings. The bond they shared had become the foundation of her strength. No longer was she the lost girl from the woods, but a young woman who had learned the power of resilience, the importance of loyalty, and the extraordinary ways in which life could surprise you. Her parents, though proud of her, still worried about the scars that remained from her time in the forest. But Zoe knew, deep down, that her healing would continue as long as she had Rocky. One afternoon, Zoe found herself sitting by the window, watching the rain fall gently outside. It had been a peaceful few weeks since her last adventure, and she was content with the quiet rhythm of life. She could feel Rocky's presence beside her, her fur warm and comforting as the dog rested at her feet. Zoe smiled softly, knowing that she had found something far more valuable than just survival. She had found true friendship, and she had found home. That evening, as the sun began to set, Zoe decided to take a walk with Rocky, as they often did. She slipped on her jacket and opened the door to find the cool air waiting for them. Rocky bounded outside, her energy infectious as always, and they began to walk together, side by side. The path they followed was familiar, one they had walked many times before. But tonight, Zoe felt something different in the air. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As they reached the edge of the park, Zoe paused and looked up at the sky. The clouds were parting, revealing the soft glow of the stars. It was a beautiful sight, one that she had come to appreciate more since her time in the woods. The world felt alive in a way it never had before. Rocky sat beside her, looking up at the sky as well, her eyes calm and knowing. Zoe took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs. She had learned to embrace these quiet moments, to find peace in the stillness. The storm that had once raged inside her had settled, and she was at peace with herself. Life had a way of changing when you least expected it. Zoe had learned that the hard way, but she had also learned that with the right companion, no challenge was too great. The love and loyalty that Rocky had shown her had helped Zoe find strength she never knew she had. And as they stood together, watching the stars twinkle above, Zoe realized that she was no longer the girl who had been lost in the woods. She was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had found her way, not just through the forest, but through life itself. She smiled and looked down at Rocky, her faithful companion. "Thank you," Zoe whispered, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. Rocky responded with a gentle nudge, as if to say, "We're in this together." Zoe nodded, knowing that no matter what the future held, she and Rocky would face it together, side by side. As the years passed, Zoe and Rocky continued to grow together, their bond becoming more unbreakable with each passing day. Zoe had become a young woman, no longer the scared girl who had wandered through the woods in search of safety. She had found herself, and in doing so, had discovered the true meaning of family, love, and loyalty. Rocky had not only been her protector in the woods, but had also guided her through life, always by her side, a steady presence through every triumph and struggle. Zoe had learned to appreciate the simple things, sunset walks with Rocky, quiet mornings together, and the unconditional love that the dog gave her every single day. But as time went on, Zoe began to feel the pull of something bigger, something outside of her small world. She had always known that her connection with Rocky was unique, but she also knew that she had a responsibility to share the lessons she had learned with others. She began to speak at local events, sharing her story of survival and the incredible bond she had with her German Shepherd. It wasn't long before her story began to inspire others, especially those who had faced their own battles, whether with loneliness, trauma, or fear. Zoe found herself giving hope to others in the same way that Rocky had given it to her. And as she helped others, she realized just how much her own healing had truly taken place. She wasn't just living in the past anymore. She was living in the present, making a difference, and finding joy in the smallest of moments. One afternoon, as Zoe sat in the park, Rocky by her side, she reflected on the journey they had taken together. The rain had started to fall lightly, and the air was cool but refreshing. Zoe smiled as she looked at Rocky, who had her usual watchful expression, her eyes scanning the surroundings with a calmness that only came from years of loyalty and trust. "We've come so far, haven't we, girl?" Zoe whispered softly, her voice full of emotion. Rocky looked at her, and it was as if the dog understood every word. They had been through so much, but through it all, they had found strength in each other. Rocky had become more than just a dog. She was Zoe's best friend, her family, her constant. Zoe's life, once marked by fear and uncertainty, was now full of love, peace, and purpose. It wasn't just the physical journey that had changed her, it was the emotional and spiritual one too. With Rocky by her side, Zoe had faced her deepest fears, overcome her most difficult obstacles, and emerged stronger than ever. As the rain continued to fall, Zoe stood up, taking Rocky's leash in her hand. "Let's go home," she said softly. They turned and walked away from the park, side by side, as they had always done, their bond a testament to the power of love and loyalty. Whatever the future held, Zoe knew that as long as she had Rocky, she would be ready to face it with courage and grace. The years that followed only deepened the connection between Zoe and Rocky. Together, they navigated life with a sense of peace and understanding that only those who had been through a great challenge could truly appreciate. Zoe had grown into a confident young woman, driven by a sense of purpose, and much of that came from the lessons Rocky had taught her. Loyalty, trust, and the importance of companionship had become the pillars of her existence. Zoe had always known that she wanted to help others, to make a difference in the world, but it was Rocky who had truly shown her how to do so. It wasn't just about saving lives. It was about sharing the love, care, and understanding that had been so freely given to her. With Rocky by her side, Zoe began to volunteer at various organizations, helping those who had faced struggles of their own. She worked with at-risk youth, survivors of trauma, and anyone who needed a reminder that there was always hope. Her story resonated with so many people, and she found herself becoming a beacon of light for others. She never could have imagined that her journey, which had started with a lost girl and a stray dog in the woods, would lead her to a life of giving and healing. One evening, After a particularly fulfilling day of volunteering, Zoe and Rocky sat together on the porch, enjoying the peaceful calm of the evening. The sun had just set, and the sky was painted with soft hues of pink and orange. Zoe stroked Rocky's fur, feeling a sense of contentment wash over her. "I never could have done this without you," Zoe whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. Rocky lifted her head and looked at Zoe with eyes full of understanding, as if she knew exactly what Zoe was feeling. It was moments like these that made Zoe realize just how much she had changed. She had found purpose, strength, and a deep sense of connection with others. It wasn't just the act of helping that mattered. It was the way that giving and receiving love had become so intertwined in her life. As she watched Rocky lie beside her, Zoe smiled, knowing that the journey they had been on together was far from over. There were more adventures to come, more lives to touch, and more lessons to learn. The bond between them was a reminder that sometimes the greatest blessings came from the most unexpected places. And no matter where life took them next, Zoe knew that as long as she had Rocky by her side, she could face anything with love, courage, and the knowledge that loyalty was the greatest gift of all. As the years went by, Zoe and Rocky continued to grow together, their bond unwavering. Zoe had fully embraced her role as a guide and source of hope for others, just as Rocky had once been for her. She had dedicated herself to helping those who were struggling, finding solace in the work she did, and teaching others the power of resilience and companionship. Rocky, always by her side, had become a symbol of hope for so many, a living testament to the incredible power of loyalty and love. Their days were filled with new challenges, but Zoe had learned to face them with grace, knowing that she wasn't alone. One morning, Zoe stood in front of a classroom full of young students, eager to share her story. She had been invited to speak at a local school, and the opportunity filled her with both excitement and nervousness. The students were from diverse backgrounds, many of them facing their own challenges. Zoe knew her story could inspire them, just as Rocky had inspired her. As she spoke about her journey, she noticed the students' eyes lighting up. They were hanging on to every word, their faces filled with curiosity and hope. Zoe spoke not only about survival, but about the lessons she had learned, how love and loyalty could change a life, how it was okay to be afraid, but it was more important to keep moving forward. She spoke about Rocky, her loyal companion, who had saved her life and had shown her that no matter how dark the world might seem, there was always light on the other side. After the talk, a young girl approached Zoe. Her eyes were wide, filled with emotion. "I lost my dog last year," the girl said quietly. "But hearing your story, I think maybe I can find a way to move on. I think I need to keep going, just like you did." Zoe smiled gently, her heart swelling with pride. "Your dog will always be a part of you," she said softly. "But you are strong enough to keep going. And there are new memories waiting for you." As the girl left, Zoe felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what she had been working toward. Not just surviving, but helping others find their own strength, their own path. The experience was a reminder of how far she had come and how much further she could go. Later that evening, Zoe and Rocky went for their usual walk, their steps in sync, just like they had been all those years ago when Zoe had first been lost. The world felt peaceful, and Zoe could see the beauty in the quiet moments. As they walked, Zoe reflected on how much her life had changed since the forest. She had found herself again, and she had found the courage to help others do the same. With Rocky by her side, she knew there was nothing she couldn't face. No matter what challenges lay ahead, Zoe was ready to embrace them, knowing that with love and loyalty, anything was possible. Zoe sat quietly on the porch, Rocky by her side, as the evening sky deepened into shades of purple and orange. The world around them had changed, but some things remained the same. The connection they shared, forged in the woods, had only grown stronger over time. Zoe had faced many challenges in her life, but none had been as defining as the time she had spent with Rocky. That experience, those 3 days in the forest, had shaped her in ways she could never fully explain. It had taught her to trust in herself again, to believe that no matter how difficult things got, she had the strength to overcome them. It had also taught her that true loyalty was not just about being there in good times, but about standing by someone in their darkest moments. Rocky had been her lifeline, her anchor, and Zoe knew she could never repay her for the gift of life she had given her. As time passed, Zoe found herself more at peace. She had built a life filled with love, hope, and purpose. Her work, helping others who had faced similar struggles, had become her calling. She had learned that healing came not only from within, but from the connections we make with others. With Rocky by her side, she had learned that love wasn't always about grand gestures. It was about being there for each other when it mattered most. One day, as they walked through the park, Zoe couldn't help but smile as she watched Rocky, her tail wagging, happily running ahead. It was a simple moment, but it filled Zoe's heart with joy. She knew that this was where she was meant to be, with the dog who had saved her life, and who had shown her what true friendship really meant. It was a bond that had withstood time, distance, and every challenge life had thrown at them. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a golden glow, Zoe knew that no matter what came next, she and Rocky would always be together. They had weathered the storm, and now they would face the future side by side, stronger than ever before. There was nothing they couldn't overcome, as long as they had each other.